Hey guys, this is Rob from UpNext MMA. Today we are continuing with our list of top USADA scandals and blunders within the UFC. Now, if you have not watched part 1, please go back and watch that video. I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can just go ahead, stop what you're doing right now, watch that video because it'll add a lot of context to this video that you're about to watch, because in part 1 we covered Nate Diaz in UFC 244. More importantly, we covered Jon Jones and the beginning of his issues with USADA and just the complete mishandling of his whole situation from UFC 217. So if you have not checked out that video, watch that below because we're basically going to pick up exactly where we left off there. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this leads us right into our next USADA blunder. It's still about Jon, so we're not going to add this on to, an extra spot on the list because of the extended timeline of Jon Jones and USADA issues, okay? But as we mentioned earlier, Jon went on to headline UFC 232 in December of 2018 in a rematch against Alexander Gustafsson for the vacant light heavyweight title. Like always, coming into the fight, Jon had issues. He was once again flagged for trace amounts of Turinabol, the same drug he tested positive for during UFC 217. And he tested out for this a few weeks out of the fight at UFC 232. As a result of the positive test and lack of time to do a proper investigation, the Nevada State Athletic Commission refused to sanction the fight. The UFC, USADA, and the media and fight fans were all shaking our heads because we all thought that Jon was going to get suspended again and that we were not going to get our long-awaited rematch between Jon and Alex. However, a day or two went by and there was no formal announcement that the fight was off. The UFC actually stayed relatively quiet until they did the exact opposite. The UFC told us not only is the fight on, but that they're moving the whole event from Las Vegas to the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Plus, we got a formal announcement from Jeff Novitzky and Dana White that preached the innocence of Jon Jones. Jeff called Jon's Turinabol positive test a result of the pulsing effect, indicating that the drug stayed within his system from the original test failure a year and a half prior, and it was not a new ingestion of the drug. Basically, no violation of USADA rules. According to USADA, this theory is backed by all the leading experts and scientists. Now, I'm not an expert on performance-enhancing drugs. Far from it. But this was a tough sell for me, man. It was real tough. Most MMA fans saw the UFC just trying to save their main event and maximize pay-per-view buys. Now, I'm not mad at it because I really wanted to see the rematch between Jon and Alex. But USADA, why did it take a week for you to figure this out for UFC 232, but 14 months to figure out Jon's original drug test failure from UFC 217? I'm not a betting man, but if I was though, I would say it has a lot to do with the fact that USADA works for the UFC. The UFC doesn't care if a no-name fighter tests positive. But it does care if it's like Nate Diaz, like we talked about earlier. If a main draw tests positive, it's a different story. When money is on the line and USADA has an issue, they figure it out, and they figure it out as soon as possible. It's clear bias and unfairness, but this is part of the game and the UFC's narrative, unfortunately. They've done this in a lot of other areas when it comes to pay, matchmaking, all that stuff. For us OG MMA fans, we've actually just come to not only accept this, but we expect it from the UFC. It is what it is, and we're going to talk about another final case which exemplifies this. This leads us to our last USADA blunder and scandal for today. It is, drumroll please, Brock Lesnar and UFC 200 and the quote-unquote USADA exemption. Now, the UFC had been trying to put together a mega card for the UFC 200 event of July of 2016. Multiple main events had fallen through at that point. They were trying to do Nate versus Conor 2. That fell through. They were trying to do Cormier versus Jones 2. But as we talked about earlier, Jones tested positive. That fell through. They needed a reliable draw that could bring pay-per-view buys to this historic event. Enter Brock Lesnar, the solution to the problem. He was a reliable buy for them in the past, and he's continued to be a reliable draw in the UFC. However, Brock had been retired. He had not fought since December of 2011 when he got destroyed by Alistair Overeem. But this was in the pre-USADA era. Brock had since gone back to the WWE. This was an issue because WWE superstars are not known for being the cleanest athletes in the world when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs. On top of that, USADA demands that anybody who signs with the UFC or comes out of retirement go through a 6-month hold period where USADA tests them continuously to verify that they're clean. But at this point, UFC 200 was only a few weeks away, and the UFC brass needed Lesnar to fight. So they granted him an exemption from the 6-month hold period. Now, I'm a hardcore UFC fan, and I stay on top of the news and rules and all that stuff. I did not even know you could get an exemption for the USADA 6-month hold period. I mean, especially when guys and other reliable pay-per-view draws like GSP had come out of retirement, and he had to wait months before being eligible to compete again because of that hold period. But of course, when Brock Lesnar is on tap to compete on short notice and drive pay-per-view buys, an exemption can be created. MMA fans and the media were shocked by this clear act of bias from USADA and the UFC. They were clearly working together to help the UFC maximize dollars earned. Brock went on to fight and beat Mark Hunt by unanimous decision. Then Brock immediately retired shortly after that fight. Unsurprisingly, Brock went on to test positive for a myriad of banned substances after the fight. The commission overturned Brock's win over Mark as a result of the positive test, and the fight was ruled a no contest. Mark Hunt was so furious at the situation that he ended up suing the UFC because, like many of us, he believed the UFC knowingly put Mark in the octagon with someone on PEDs. I believe Mark's case was dismissed from court in 2019, and the whole situation was a fiasco from top to bottom. The Brock Lesnar situation was handled so poorly by the UFC and USADA, it makes it even far worse that this was a clear act of corruption and bias that took place. But once again, MMA fans, we just accept it. It just is what it is. It's the UFC and it's USADA. But anyways, that's it for today's video. That's our top 3 list of USADA blunders and scandals. Thank you all for watching until the end. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell so you know whenever we have a new video coming out. We've got 3 videos coming out for you every single week. Let us know in the comments what you think about these USADA scandals, these fighters, or what you think about the UFC and USADA as a whole. Do you honestly think USADA is doing that much good for the sport? I I don't know, man. I don't know. What do you guys think, though? Tell me in the comments. I love discussing MMA, the UFC, USADA with you guys, and I love engaging. So please drop a like if you like this video and tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you. Bye.